Joining our discussion now is Quentin Fowkes, Principal Deputy Campaign Manager for the Biden-Harris re-election campaign. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I wanted to get your reaction to what Donald Trump just said in the last hour. He was on Fox for 20 minutes of basically ranting about the southern border without a single sentence that I could transcribe and present to you to make any sense. In the middle of it all, there was exactly one line that I could understand and make sense of. Talking about President Biden, Donald Trump said, he's destroying Social Security. That is the only thing that Donald Trump said about Social Security. There wasn't a sentence after that to explain what he meant by what he said there. What is the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden on Social Security?
In this instance, Donald Trump is a liar. We saw him do it on the debate stage. Donald Trump has been hell-bent on gutting Social Security and Medicare since the moment he was elected. He has doubled down on it, and every single time he gets in front of a microphone, he lies and tries to moderate his position on it. But Donald Trump does not care about Social Security. He does not care about seniors. He honestly doesn't care about anyone except himself, which is why he is in this race in the first place, to be a dictator. And the Supreme Court that he largely appointed have just given him the keys to do it. Look at Project 2025. I encourage Americans across the country to look it up. It's terrifying. We should be afraid. He wants to gut checks and balances, get rid of departments like the Department of Education, monitor women's pregnancies, fill cabinet positions with Trump loyalists who are going to continue to take away people's rights and freedoms. Americans should look at it. It was written for Trump by people closest to him. He is trying to distance himself from it, but this is Donald Trump's platform. It is extreme and it is dangerous.
We saw President Biden out there on the road this weekend while Donald Trump was, as President Biden said, doing absolutely nothing. How much campaigning are you going to be able to mix into what's coming now with the NATO summit?
Look, the president is committed to continuing to communicate directly to American voters so that they can see him in their communities where it matters most. You heard the president this morning on Morning Joe talk about what he did. We did these events because the president wanted to go out and hear directly from voters. You heard clips earlier in the show from Congressman Horsford, Leader Jeffries, talking about what they did. They spent time in their districts listening to voters because voters pick presidents, and the voters have overwhelmingly said that Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee. You just heard Congresswoman Beatty lay out the fact that President Biden got 87% of the 14 million votes cast. He holds 3,900 delegates, an overwhelming majority. That is what President Biden is committed to doing, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to get the president in front of as many people as possible to lay out the stakes of this election, which are quite simply, President Biden wakes up every single day fighting for the American people. Donald Trump is only in this campaign for revenge, retribution, and continuing to excite political extremism across this country.
So far, I believe there's 9 Democratic members of the House, approximately, who have said President Biden should step down as the nominee, serve out his term, and help create another ticket. That's, of course, that's less than 5% of the Democrats in the House of Representatives. But there are 2 senators. I want to read you 2 senators' statements, Democratic senators, because they are both highly influential senators. And one is Elizabeth Warren. This is the one you're going to like. She told the Boston Globe tonight, President Biden is our nominee. He is an excellent president. He works hard on behalf of working families every day. That's Senator Elizabeth Warren speaking to the Boston Globe. Senator Patty Murray says something different. She says, I have a deep appreciation and a strong respect for Joe, who has led a historic first term as president. Still, we need to see a much more forceful and energetic candidate on the campaign trail in the very near future in order for him to convince voters he is up to the job. I believe President Biden must do more to demonstrate he can campaign strong enough to beat Donald Trump. Do you take that that statement from Patty Murray basically as your kind of strategic campaign marching orders at this point?
I take it as a continuation of everything that we have been doing. The president has been out and about it is going to be a continuation of a robust travel schedule across the country into our battleground states, communicating with voters directly where they are. We're going to continue opening field offices, almost at 300 now. We're going to continue hiring staff in battleground states. We're going to continue to build a volunteer base to take the message directly to American voters. The president has been out. We just saw him in Philadelphia. He was at a church. He was in Madison, Wisconsin, did a rally. The president has been meeting with congressional leaders, talking about what's at stake in this election and the work that they must continue to do. All of these people who are, giving recommendations and talking about what the president should and shouldn't do, they are patriots. They care about their country. They were involved in passing a lot of the legislation that President Biden has signed into law, and under his leadership have delivered real things for the American people. So all of this comes from a place of goodwill. And we take it as a sign that we now need to come together as a Democratic Party to defeat Donald Trump, because he is extreme, dangerous, out of touch from the American people. But the voters have spoken. President Biden is the presumptive Democratic nominee. Our campaign has earned that, and we're going to continue to build on what we have to this point to make sure we're communicating our message to American voters directly.
So the Biden-Harris campaign owns the Democratic convention. In addition to running this presidential campaign and moving your candidates around, you also have to be planning the Democratic convention, the lineup of speakers, everything, entertainment, everything. Is that planning for a Biden-Harris convention going ahead as it normally would be at this time?
Never stopped at all. Joe Biden is the nominee. We've known it since we wrapped up the Democratic primary process with force. Voters overwhelmingly spoke. We're excited about hosting a convention in Chicago. We look forward to telling the story of President Biden and Vice President Harris and the second-term vision that they have for this country.
Quentin Fowlkes, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.